Hello, everyone, and welcome to not your usual stream, but rather an announcement. So, this was technically teased back in 2024 when I erroneously and then unerroneously, I don't even know if that last word was a word. If not, then I just made it up. So, you might remember that back in 2024, I did two streams during the summer. One in June, which actually ended up being erroneous because
Hi.
well, you'll find out in a moment. But the other stream, which was in July of that year, was not erroneous. And both of those streams were actually related to my trips to summer camp that I went to as a kid.
Hi.
The erroneous one was the one in June because at the time I thought it was 2004 when I first went to camp and not 2005. However, I later found out from my grandfather, no, it was 2005, not 2004. 2004 would have been the year that I went, but I was, bleh, I almost said I was too young. No, I was old enough to go that year. It's just that by the time I turned old enough, the deadline to get signed up and everything had elapsed. So I had to wait until the next year in 2005. That's why last year I did that 5-day series that aimed to kind of encapsulate that feeling. Um, and so, yeah. Um, but July in 2024, that was the 15th anniversary of my last ever trip to summer camp. Now, where am I going with this? Uh-oh. 2024 was the year that I first introduced a character by the name of BC. BC being... Oh, anyway, shut up. It was the year that I first introduced a character by the name BC. You might have noticed that it was a character who had I believe it was called the Caesar haircut. So it's in reference to Julius Caesar, but it's also this kind of younger looking character. And it's meant to represent my younger self. You know, because, as you know, I'm 29, and obviously, you know, a 29-year-old wouldn't be going to a summer camp meant for kids unless he was working there as like a custodian or something. I just killed a deer. I'm gonna have dinner later. Anyway, so, you're probably wondering, so what is this announcement anyway? Can't you get on to it? Yes. I'm pleased to announce that on the 29th of this month, just in time for the summer vacation to start, for many people out there, that will be the starting date for a new series known as Rewind, The Young Life of BC. What the? I don't think the map's supposed to be doing that. Anyway, sorry about that. Okay, whatever then. I don't know why you're showing weird low-res textures stuff. Anyway. So, Rewind is a series that is seen as a direct, bleh, not direct. I was trying to say direct successor, but for whatever reason, I just couldn't say successor. I don't know why. Anyway, it is the direct successor to Radical Rewind, which I did a couple of years ago. Radical Rewind itself was a sort of revisit to the past. You know, seeing like video games and stuff from different decades and everything. Excuse me. But this rewind differs because it's set in it's weird. So think of it like this: a shooting star, right? You think about that every single time you see a meteor falling from the sky. Every single time you see that and you're with someone, they always tell you, hey, make a wish. Maybe it'll come true. And you hope and pray with all your might that it will. But unfortunately, that just never comes to fruition. What if, by some chance, some weird, wacky chance, this actually does end up working? Just found out the synopsis for the very first episode of Rewind. Rewind itself initially takes place, albeit very briefly, in the modern day. So, as of this very moment, where BC, who is literally the same age as me, because he is directly based on me, right down to the fact that his name is literally just my initials. And yes, that is his legal name is BC. So what ends up happening is that he sees a shooting star while he's out with some friends, and it's worth noting that there are some things that happen beforehand that has him down in the dumps. And so his friends tell him to, wish on the shooting star to, make him feel better. So he does. And his wish, as you might expect from the name of the series, is to be a kid again. Re-experience his childhood and just stay there. Because as you all know, your childhood is absolutely going to be the best years of your life. Like all the fun things that you could do, all the places you could go to, all that stuff. And as an adult, you have responsibilities, you have all these different things. And this kind of ties into myself, where, my present day self, like, as you know by now, I've been living with my grandmother for 2 months, going on 3, and it's until I decide on what I need to do next. Whether that be, moving in with a friend, or, something along those lines. But it also stems from the fact that there have been a lot of personal things that I've gone through recently that have caused me to feel. I'd rather not get into them because it's very personal. But what I will say is that this series that I'm announcing, it's more so rewinding to a time where my own personal life was at its peak. Where I was just a young kid, having fun, seeing friends and all that stuff. But what if I were to put a spin on it? Where, just like a storyline I've made called Venture, this story is also set in the 2000s, and it just never leaves that. Well, there you go. That is exactly what's going on. So, basically, the first episode is just that BC, his adult self, he gets off work. Or rather, he gets let go just simply because of the fact that the company he is working at, they aren't doing so well. So, they end up having to cut off people, they have to let people go just simply because of the fact that they're starting to exhaust their resources. And BC was one of those people on the chopping block. So he's understandably upset. In case you're wondering, yes, this is his vehicle, is the here in Everon RS, which, for the sake of the fact that Rewind takes place in the real world, so to speak, I will refer to this vehicle as the Toyota Tundra X1. Even though this is actually based on a concept vehicle, but for the sake of story, I'm going to make it as if it was a real vehicle they made. So, yeah. He ends up leaving his workplace after getting let go. Which, it's not disciplinary. He wasn't fired necessarily. Because I always like to differentiate the two, where if you're let go, then that means that there was something out of your control. If you're fired, then that means that you did something wrong and you had to pay the price for it. And so because of that, he ends up contacting a few of his friends. And spit going down my throat, so I couldn't say it properly. He contacts a few friends. They all get together to hang out, play video games, just like old times. And then, they go out to a quieter area outside on a hill. And then that's when they see a shooting star. And so his friends, seeing that he's had a bad day, cheer on BC to wish on that shooting star. And, just like I said a while ago when the stream started, but it was like we were way over there somewhere. You can pray, you can wish with all your might, you can hope to the last fiber of your being that this wish will come true. And it just seems like they never work. But what if it did? So, sure enough, he wishes, hoping that it'll come true, because he just can't stand the way life is, and it's not just him, it's everybody. Every day in the present day era that we live in today is just harder and harder, and I'm sure you can imagine why. I'm not going to get into politics, but I'm sure you can understand a few of the reasons. Did I just say politics? Politics. Anyway, so what ends up happening is, after he wishes on the shooting star and he hangs out with his friends for a while, everyone just ends up going their separate ways and going back home. BC, however, he goes to sleep, but when he wakes up, he finds himself in a different location than he remembers. And he also finds himself looking different as well. And I'm going to warn you, because of the fact that I'll be streaming this series in GTA Online, this does mean that it's going to be a very barbaric way of doing it, where I just do things manually. But just note that for the sake of immersion, I'd like you to just ignore that, just for the sake of it being like, I'm setting things up. So during those segments, I'll just call it out of character, and that'll give me time to address comments and all this other stuff. And then whenever I say, like in character or I see, that means that I'm back in character and the story can, progress. It's just my way of kind of like breaking, I wouldn't say the action, because there's nothing that goes on in terms of like tensions and everything, because this story is meant to be very lighthearted, and it's supposed to be fun and stuff, but anyway, because YouTube don't make it seem like I'm trying to be kid friendly, because this channel is still very much just like the video game I'm playing, rated M for mature. I have my content set to, more mature audiences. I do curse sometimes, but in this new series, I will refrain from doing that unless I'm out of character. And it's just simply because of the fact that BC himself, although he is technically considered ageless by the time the wish happens, he is meant to resemble my 9-year-old self. And it's because of the fact that the story initially takes place this year in 2026, but it rewinds to, you could call it 2006, but at the same time, like, there is no defined year, so it's just called the 2000s, but officially it starts off in 2006. But, you'll find out as time progresses how things will work. Anyway, yeah, so that's the announcement. I will be doing this series on the 29th of this month, just in time for school to let out for people. And you'll find out why that particular part of my announcement is important, because, yeah. Anyway, that being said, thank you all very much for watching, even if it was just one singular person. And I will see you all soon. In a few weeks from now. Catch you later.